Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. My beloved brothers and sisters and friends, Muslims and Christians, we welcome you tonight to this very historic debate entitled Crucifixion, Facts or Fiction. The debate, the format of tonight's debate, the first speaker will speak for 50 minutes. The second speaker will speak for 60 minutes. And the first speaker will come again and speak for 10 minutes. After that, you, the audience, will have an opportunity to participate and ask your questions. So with that, brothers and sisters, I'm going to flip the coin and ask the gentleman to choose head or tails, and the one who wins will have the choice to begin or not to begin. Okay. Mr. Ahmed Deedat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقل جاء الحق وزهق الباطل إن الباطل كان زهوقا وننزل من القرآن ما هو شفاء ورحمة للمؤمنين ولا يزيد الظالمين إلا خسارا صدق الله العظيم. Mr. Chairman and my dear brothers and sisters, at the outset, since I'm beginning the talk and I see a lot of faces which appear to me to be those of the Christian faith, I would like to put forth our position vis-a-vis Christianity, that Islam is the only non-Christian faith which makes it an article of faith for its followers to believe in Jesus. No Muslim is a Muslim if he does not believe in Jesus. We are made to believe that Jesus Christ was one of the mightiest messengers of God. We believe in his miraculous birth, which many modern day Christians do not believe today. We believe that he was the Messiah, translated Christ. And we believe that he gave life to the dead by God's permission, and he healed those born blind and the lepers by God's permission. As such, the Muslim and the Christian is going together. But the parting of the way takes place on three bases. Number one, the original sin. Number two, the divinity of Christ. And number three, the crucifixion. These are points of differences between the Muslims and the Christians. With regards to the subject of crucifixion, as you see here on this banner here, it says crucifixion, fact or fiction. Now the Holy Quran gives a direct answer to that question. It says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. وَقَوْلِهِمْ إِنَّا قَتَلْنَا الْمَسِيحَ عِيسَى ابْنُ مَرْيَمَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. And they said in boast that we killed Christ Jesus, the son of Mary, the apostle of God. The Quran goes on, says, وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ وَمَا صَلَبُوهُ. They didn't kill him, nor did they crucify him. وَلَكِنْ شُبِّهَ لَهُمْ. But it was made to appear to them so. وَإِنَّ الَّذِينَ اخْتَلَفُوا فِيهِ لَفِي شَقٍّ مِّنْهُمْ. And those who dispute therein are full of doubts. مَا لَهُمْ بِهِ مِنْ عِلْمٍ. They have no certain knowledge. إِلَّا اتِّبَاعَ الظَّنِّ. They only follow conjecture, guesswork, fiction. وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ يَقِينًا. For of a surety they killed him not. It calls this event described by the Christian as crucifixion, C-R-U-C-I-F-I-X-I-N, crucifixion, to fix a person on the cross, anyhow, by nails or ropes or strings, and have him killed. To crucify means to kill by hanging or impaling on the cross, F-I-X-I-O-N, crucifixion. We say it is F-I-C-T-I-O-N fiction. It sounds the same, crucifixion or crucifixion. The spelling gives us the difference between the two. That in the Islamic point of view, it is a fiction. Now, when we say that it is a fiction, the Christian brings forth, produces his book of evidence. He says, here, we have a written record by eyewitnesses and ear witnesses to the happenings some 2,000 years ago, that Jesus Christ was hanged and killed on the cross some 2,000 years ago. Now, what I'm going to do tonight is, instead of telling you this is what the Muslims say, this is what the Quran says, I said, look, I want to show to you that the Bible that you hold in your hands, whatever version you have, you will find the verses that I'm going to quote and the argument I'm going to adduce. See, Jesus Christ, after his alleged crucifixion, he returns to that upper room where they had the Last Supper. And he walks in and he says, Shalom Aleichem in Hebrew, meaning peace be unto you. When he said peace be unto you, his disciples were terrified. So I'm asking my learned friends, I have been doing this for quite some time, my learned friends of Christianity, why were they terrified? Because when you meet your long lost master, your uncle, your grandfather, your priest, your guru, the Arab and the Jew will embrace one another, kiss one another in the neck. That's how they meet one another, show the love and compassion for one another. Instead of doing that, the disciples of Jesus were terrified. I want to know why. Why were they terrified? So the Christian tells me, he says, you see in Luke chapter 24, we are told by Luke that they were affrighted because they thought he was a spirit. The wordings are, they thought he was a spirit, a ghost, a spook. So I'm asking, did he look like a spirit? Did he look like a ghost? Did he look like a spook? The Christian says no. Then I said, why should they think the man is a spirit when he didn't look like one? So he gets puzzled. This is my experience with the most learned men of Christianity. They get puzzled. Why would they think the man is a spirit when he doesn't look like a spirit? I said the reason is that the disciples of Jesus, they had heard from hearsay, people were talking, that the master was hanged on the cross. They had heard from hearsay, people were talking, that he had given up the ghost. In other words, the spirit had come out, he had died. They had heard from hearsay what people were talking, that he is now dead and buried for 3 days. A man with such a reputation, you expect that man to be stinking in his grave after 3 days. Because all the knowledge of the disciples was from hearsay. Because Mark chapter 14 verse 50, he says that at the most critical juncture in the life of Jesus, all his disciples forsook him and fled. All his disciples, they forsook him and fled, which means they were not eyewitnesses or ear witnesses to the happenings. The knowledge was from hearsay. So on hearsay evidence, if you know about a man who is dead and buried, and when you see such a person, seemingly that person, naturally you are terrified, because you are thinking the man is a spook, a ghost. So Jesus Christ, wanting to assure them that is not what they are thinking, he says, and I'm quoting, he says, behold my hands and my feet. Look, have a look at my hands and my feet. That it is I myself, I'm the same fellow man. What's wrong with you? What are you afraid of me for? He said, handle me and see. Handle me and see. For a spirit has no flesh and bones as you see me have. A spirit means any spirit. This is an axiomatic truth. You don't have to prove this to the Jews, to the atheists, to the agnostics. It's an axiomatic truth, universally accepted, that a spirit will not have flesh and bones. Then why is Jesus at pains to tell them so? and in fact well known and accepted. The reason is because the disciples of Jesus were thinking the man has come back from the dead, he was resurrected, he was spiritualized. That is the reason. So he's telling them, I am not what you are thinking. I am not a spirit, I am not a ghost, I am not a spook. And they handled him, and they believed not for joy. It means they were overjoyed and wondered, what happened, man? We thought the man was dead and buried. But we can see he's demonstrating that he is himself, flesh and blood. And they believed not for joy and wondered. So Jesus wants to assure them further. He says, have you here any meat? Something to eat? And they gave him a piece of broiled fish and a honeycomb, and he took it and he ate in the very sight. To prove what? That is a ghost? That is a spook? That is a spirit? No. To prove that he is himself and he is not resurrected. Because the resurrected bodies get spiritualized. Who says so? I say Paul. Who says so? I say Jesus. Who says so? I say each and every one of you. Each and every one of you will admit that the resurrected bodies won't be this. Flesh and blood, flesh and bones. It will be spiritualized. But the greatest testifier of the scriptures, Paul, of Christianity, Paul, in his book of Corinthians, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, he says, talking about the resurrection of Christ. The whole chapter in some Bibles is headed the resurrection of Christ. The chapter itself is addressed as resurrection of Christ. In verse 3 he says, Christ died for our sins according to the scriptures. Verse 4, and he was raised again from the dead according to the scriptures. The scriptures that he's talking about is not Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, because they were not written. His is about 56 after Christ, and the others goes to about 60 according to Christian scholars. So he's not referring to Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. He was, going through them and found out what was what. No. He's speaking from his knowledge of the Old Testament. Verse 14 he says, if Christ is not risen from the dead, our preaching is vain, your faith is vain. In other words, Christianity has nothing to offer mankind. You have nothing to offer. And I can assure you that in my country, the Christian missionary, when he comes to our homes, he does not come to tell us about hygiene, personal hygiene I mean. We Muslims are the most hygienic people on earth. I will not go into details, this is not the occasion. The most hygienic people on earth. At question time you may ask and I will demonstrate to you, I'll explain to you. We are the most hospitable people on earth. In ethics and in morality, you can't point a finger at us that we are better than you. No group of religious group in my country can show a candle to us that we are better than you. The only thing he can tell us is that you have no salvation. Because salvation only comes through the blood of the Lord Jesus, which you do not accept. That's the only thing he has to tell us. So, Paul says that if this didn't happen, then your preaching is vain, useless, worthless, and your faith is also useless, worthless. As the American would put it, it's all garbage. Your religion is garbage if you didn't have this. This is the only sales point that you have. Then in verse 35 he says, someone may rationally ask, how do the dead rise again? And with what kind of body will they come? He poses this question not seeking information from us, but it's a rhetoric question, and he himself answers it in verse 42. He says there that which is sown, means buried, is sown in weakness, it is raised in power. It is sown in corruption, and it is raised in glory. It is sown, means buried, a physical body, and it is raised a spiritual body. Once you die, this body, this physical body is put into the dust, dust with dust, From dust thou art, and to dust thou shalt return. Finished. But when you are resurrected, it is not the dust. It will be a spiritualized body according to Saint Paul. And on that premise, the whole of his 14 books in the New Testament are written. More than half the New Testament was written by Paul, 14 out of the 27 books, and the whole premises of his argument is that Christ was risen from the dead, resurrected spiritually. A spiritual body. When people say spiritual body, they think, well, body, what is body? Look at the dictionary. And then we say, look, body has mass, volume, dimensions. So it says, you see, there was a body. I said, this is an apparition. When you see an apparition, what is the apparition? It appears to us in the form of a body. The ghost you see, what do you see? You see something that appears to be a humankind. But we know that thing is something you can't grapple with, you can't grasp it, you can't pocket it. You see, the filmmakers, you American filmmakers in Hollywood, they have made these things something that we can imagine far more easily. Again and again, they conjure up, somebody coming out through a keyhole, a steam comes out, and then you find it materializes into a man, the invisible man. Or Sabu, he played the thief of Baghdad, in which you see that he picks up a bottle on the seashore, and he opens a bottle, and something comes out like a smoke, and it materializes into a genie. But that genie has a form, it has a body, but it is an invisible, imperceptible body, something that you can't grapple with. But you say a body, you see a body. If it's only thin air, you see nothing. It might be there, but you see nothing. So it materializes, so we say it appears to us in the form of a body. So, spiritual body, says Saint Paul. That's his understanding of the resurrection. Everybody, anybody, when you are resurrected, you will be spiritualized. And he was only confirming what Jesus had said in the Gospel of St. Luke, according to the records, chapter 20. Have some water, please. Thank you. In chapter 20 of Luke, we read there that the Jews, his own people, they come to him. They were always coming to him with poses and riddles, trying to trip this man of God. And now they come to him and they say, Master, in the Hebrew language, Rabbi, respected learned man, priest, bishop, whatever, Rabbi. There was a woman among us. And that woman, according to a Jewish practice, had 7 husbands. See, there was a Jewish custom that if one brother died, and if he left no offsprings, then the second brother takes her to wife. And when he fails and dies, the third fellow takes her to wife. And when he fails and dies, the fourth, and the fifth, and the sixth, and the seventh. 7 guys had this one woman, one after another. But there was no problem, because it was all one by one. So they're asking Jesus now that at the resurrection, which guy is going to have her? Because they all had her here. So if you have her here, you're going to have her on the other side. This is natural. Suppose you and your wife are resurrected and you see on the other side me. It's a darling, sweetheart, come, sweetie. This is natural. If you recognize your wife, on the other side, he says, well, the closeness that you have established on this earth, for 5 years, 50 years, you have been together as husband and wife. Now you want to establish or continue the same relationship on the other side. But at the resurrection, since everybody is resurrected instantaneously, simultaneously, same time, then the 7 brothers waking up, one time, and they see this woman, then everybody will be going after her. You see? He says, this is mine, I had her. The other guy says, this is mine, I had her. Everybody had her. And everybody will be fighting over this one woman as wife. And there'll be war in heaven between the 7 brothers. Each person can't get away, this is mine, this is mine. Now, where you come from? He says, I had her. Because they won't remember the other guys having her before them. You see? So they want to know from Jesus, which guy is going to have her on the other side. Because they all had her here. In answer to that, Jesus says, he says, neither shall they die anymore. Meaning that once they are resurrected, they will be immortalized. Neither shall they die anymore. They will be immortalized. In other words, the things that kill a person, lack of food, shelter, clothing, rest, these things will not be necessary on the other side. Once you die, you do not die a second time. No more death, immortalized. This is the physical body which has got its physical needs. Food, shelter, clothing, sex, rest. That body, no food, no shelter, no clothing, no sex, no rest of the type that we know. It will be of some kind, other kind, spiritual kind, but not this kind. So he says, neither shall they die anymore, for they are equal unto the angels. In other words, they will be angelized. They'll have spiritual bodies like angels. What kind of bodies they have? Not this. For they are equal unto the angels. They will be angelized. They will be spiritualized. They will have spiritual bodies. They will be spirits. For they are equal unto the angels and the children of God. For such are the children of the resurrection. Such. Spirits. They will be such. Spirits. Paul says spirits. Jesus says spirits. I wonder if there is a single person here who takes exception to that. He says it will be this body. Is there one here? In the Royal Albert Hall, in front of some 6,000 people in London, I posed the question, and there was not a single Muslim or Christian who could take exception to these axiomatic truths, that resurrection, at that time, your bodies will be spiritualized. Paul says so, Jesus says so, I say so, and you say so. So he says the spirit has no flesh and bones. In other words, I'm not what you are thinking. You are thinking that I've come back from the dead. That is not so. I'm not resurrected. And yet the whole Christian world, they say that he died and he was resurrected. The man says, I am not what you are thinking, and eating broiled fish and honeycomb. These are the needs of this physical body. But somehow, you see, people get programmed. I was talking about people getting brainwashed. At the Berkeley University in 1977, I was talking to my American people, some teachers and students, and I said, you people are brainwashed. So one professor stood up, he says, I beg your pardon, we are programmed. I said, right, programmed. Not brainwashed. So we all get programmed. See, from childhood, because our salvation depends on this, that we must believe that Christ died and was resurrected. But resurrection is spiritual. And we find that everything about Jesus, after his post-crucifixion events, not once does he appear to be a spirit. He is ever in hiding. He is ever in hiding. He never came out into the open. He never went to the temple of Jerusalem. He had given the Jews a sign. He never went to fulfill that sign. Sign means a miracle. To say, look, you remember what I told you? Here I am. Do your worst. But he didn't dare do anything. He didn't dare to go to meet these people, the Jews, his own people. He had given them a sign. In Matthew chapter 12, verse 38, 39, 40, we read there, again, the same type of confrontation. The Jews come along, and they said, Master, again, in the Hebrew language, Rabbi, we would have a sign of thee. In other words, we want you to show us a miracle to convince us that you are above the ordinary. You are the man we are waiting for, the Messiah. Do something like flying in the air, like a bird, walk on the water, give life to the dead, do something, man. Then we know that you are above the ordinary. So that we can believe that you are our Messiah. In response to that, Jesus says,